Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino Watt.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kurt Stormberg. I'm the president of the PCSO, and today we're going to talk about all the great things that are happening at the PCSO and around the country. So I'm looking forward to talking with Dino about all these subjects.
Hello, once again, everybody. We're excited to have you here as the president of the PCSO, not only because the PCSO is coming up in just a few months, the annual meeting in Hawaii this time, but also I get to come out and MC the entire event and get to be around some really awesome people, including many of the people listening to this podcast. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today, Dino.
Well, we got to talk a little bit beforehand, and it's just interesting what a small world it is and the different people that we know and have crossed our paths throughout the years. But I would love for people who don't know too much about what it is you do and what your role and responsibility is, give them a little bit of your backstory and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, Dino told you my name, Kurt Stormberg. I am the president of the PCSO, and the PCSO is the largest constituency in the AAO. And so we represent all the Western states, including Nevada, Arizona, Alaska, Hawaii, and the 3 Canadian provinces. So I represent over 3,000 orthodontists on the West Coast. The PCSO is the most progressive and really one of the best constituencies in the AAO. We do quite a bit for our members. Our annual sessions are probably the most well-attended and really the most dynamic programs out there in the United States. We compete with all the big name meetings, whether it's MKS, Invisalign Summit. We have a great meeting and it's a lot of fun. We do a lot of other things. Obviously, we advocate for our members at both the state, provisional, and national levels. When it comes to issues with DIY, student loan debt, and many other things. And then we also have other things that we have produced over the years. We developed the financial literacy program for all of our residents in the PCSO, and it's a really comprehensive program that teaches the young residents how to manage their money, their debt, how to purchase a practice, and so it's really a great program. So that's just a little bit about what we do at the PCSO. Obviously, myself, I've worked through organized dentistry and orthodontics over the last 20-some years of my career. I started out as a president of our local study club here, our Ortho Study Club, which is one of the larger ortho study clubs in San Diego, and then got recruited by the Dental Society. Became the president of the San Diego County Dental Society, worked at the California Dental Association level, and then I was recruited by the Pacific Society of Orthodontics to come to their board of directors. And now, as they say, the rest is history. Now I'm the president of this great organization, and I love to give back to both my profession and my specialty. It's so very important. I always encourage the young doctors to do that. There's a lot of negativity sometimes out there on what organized dentistry does and orthodontics, but we really do a tremendous amount of work on behalf of our members. And you would be very satisfied in your career if you gave back more doing things like that.
Well, man, there's like a plethora of questions I have to ask you now that with your service and what you've gone through, just with what you named, what the PCSO does. Well, where my brain is going is I actually, even before we got on the air, I asked you, are you still practicing? You're like, oh, I have, you have a very large practice in San Diego.
A very large practice.
So my mind went there because it's so curious to me, obviously, with the duties you have as part of the PCSO, that's a lot. Like you're taking on a lot. And then you're taking on your business, and I deal with practice owners on a daily basis, and I know how much they have on their plate. And you have got to have great organizational skills to do that.
That is correct.
You've got to be willing to delegate to do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I am very good at multitasking. I'm very organized. When you have a big practice, and you have to, you know, you have 16 employees and you see 120 patients a day, plus you do your leadership stuff. You have to be very well organized. You also have to have a very good partner. And my wife has been a very good partner in my life and has been with me since the Navy days. And her and I met when I was first in the Navy. And so she knows the gig and has been very supportive. And when you have that, that's very helpful to you.
That's not a skill a lot of guys have. And as a matter of fact, delegating becomes a very big challenge for a lot of docs.
That's right.
The idea of, you know, it's just going to get done faster if I just do it myself, right? That type of idea. And that becomes the stress and the overwhelm and the frustration, and then cut to, I hate my practice.
Right.
Besides the training that you have, and of course, having a very supportive spouse is amazing. What are some things that you might be able to kind of impart wisdom to some of these guys who are struggling a little bit with that? And how can they overcome this ego almost?
Right. So sometimes what you have to do, though, is not everybody needs to have a practice like mine. And I talk to the young orthodontists and I say, look, I have friends who, my good friend Jason Cope, who's in Dallas, he used to be the only employee he had. He did everything himself, all the way to, I have friends who have 3 doctors, 5 locations, they see 100 patients a day. It really has to be your personality to fit your practice, okay? So if you want to be that type of a person, yes, you have to learn how to delegate. You have to be able to trust people. And I learned that really early in my career, to learn how to delegate and to trust people to handle it. Obviously, you need to train them.
Right. Well, what I love what you said at the very beginning, the first part of that was that you have to know what you want. And some of these guys look at somebody like your practice and go, oh, that's the goal. Well, is it? Like, do you want to work that hard? Do you want to have to learn those skills?
Yeah. And for me, Dino, it's guess what? Those guys who have less patients probably make the exact same amount of money I do, because your overhead just increases with, more people.
Absolutely.
Now, I like having a big practice because I feel like I give access to patients, and I'm able to see a ton of patients. And I tell, it's always funny when certain orthodontists get mad if GPs do ortho or something. I go, well, there's only 9,000 of us in the country, and the average orthodontist maybe sees 300 to 400 starts a year. So we're only seeing about 3 million patients. What do you think the other ones are going to do? I mean, I said, I have a huge practice where I start 900 patients, and even that, isn't enough.
Kurt, I can't tell you how much that's music to my ears, because I say, so my equation is this. I said to doctors who complain about competition, oh, we got this guy just came into town, or we've got new blood or whatever. And the first thing I say is, what, competition is in your head. It's because you don't actually know who your ideal client is, and you're worried about the wrong thing. I mean, it's getting more and more obvious why you're in the position you are with the PCSO, in order to guide and teach and train. And I love what you were talking about at the beginning of all the benefits of being with the PCSO. One of them, obviously, the continuing education part of it, which I think a lot of people, from my experience anyway, and in my program, one of the base models is continual learning, right?
Yes.
And whether it be inside of your profession or not. I use the example how I picked up the piano 4 years ago, and my business has skyrocketed ever since. The piano has nothing to do with my business, but it's just helped me think differently. I'm learning something.
Didn't I see you in Vegas opening for Elton John?
Well, it's true, but I did that for free because he's and so I felt bad. He needed a good opening act. He's not really. So when I talk about continual learning, there's that continual education side of it that I think is so valuable and important to sharpen that saw, right? Like Stephen Covey says, right? Sharpen that saw. And it's just one of those things where I think people take a little bit for granted. And it sounds like the PCSO is really focused on making sure people have multiple access to it.
Right.
Like you said, man, financial literacy, like this is really something that more and more people need, just in general, let alone orthodontists and dentists, and you're giving them access to stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, short of short of paying the new and younger, the younger members student loans, there's not much we can do, but we can teach them how to manage their finances so they don't get in trouble. So they don't buy that Lamborghini their first year out and stay in their old Datsun. You know what I mean? All these things that you learn with life. All of us that came out, it's not like the student loan debt is it's probably much bigger now than it was, but we all came out with debt. And we all kind of sacrificed those first few years to kind of get it under control. And you don't want people to make bad choices. So that's why we developed that financial literacy program, because of that.
It's great. I mean, not only that, but then when you're talking about the current, obviously it's a current challenge for them when it comes to finances, but what's happening in this industry over the last 5 years even has really shifted. And I'm sure it's got a lot of people really worried and scared and trying to figure out where to turn. And if the PCSO is the place they can go to learn about how do you deal with DIY stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right. And here's the thing that for, I would say, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, started the whole process of, hey, stop using the goop, right? Oh, this is terrible. You're gagging me. Now PCS, our Smile Direct Clips made it fun. Hey, guess what you get to do? You get to do your own. That type of education of understanding how to combat it, I don't know is the best word, but way to work with either with it or understand it or to utilize it is vital, and you guys have this resource to figure that out.
So obviously the PCSO, along with their components, work with the AO Legal to help deal with companies that come into states or provinces that are basically breaking the Dental Practice Act. And we have cases in Nevada, Idaho, California that we're working with legislatures because that's really where it needs to come. Because sometimes the attorney generals, like right now in California, the attorney general has a complaint at his level, but he hasn't done anything about it. So we went to the legislatures, who we all know, to kind of make something happen because, basically they're skirting the law. We can't, do anything without, doing this regulation. But the other thing about these DIYs is, they are not a threat in a sense to orthodontists. They are a threat to not the public, but they're also more of a threat to the GPs because the GPs do the simple cases. And the DIYs, they do the simple cases. So they're really taking those. And most people are not going to let their kids do a, over-the-counter treatment.
Right.
And if they do, they couldn't probably afford regular ortho anyways, in a sense, and they're only worried about the front 4 teeth. So I know for me, I don't think of it as a competition issue. I think of it as a public health issue. And I never worry about a DIY type company affecting my practice other than as a representative organized ortho, I worry about the public health.
And the PCSO becomes the fulcrum that individual doctors can use to help get these things resolved. Because if you have the guy who's sitting out in Kansas, in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, how am I going to combat these guys? They've got bigger budgets, they've got lobbyists, all this stuff, right? Yeah. So PCSO, I know Kansas isn't part of PCSO, but
it's Southwest, but Rock Chalk Jayhawk, right?
Okay, so I want to move into a section of what I'd like to do is just ask a few business but also personal related questions where people can get some of your wisdom, if you will.
Of course.
All right, so in our industry, obviously in any industry, in the private practice industry, there's a lot of challenges that people come up against. And you have different errors that you make and things like that. But I'd like to ask you, what is the most expensive thing private practice are missing in their practice, do you think?
I think the treatment coordinator position is probably the most important thing that an office should have, because I think orthodontists think that the patient wants to sit down with them for a half an hour and talk about their case. And it's ridiculous. I always laugh. One of my best friends, he goes, Oh, no, I think they really want me to sit there for 25 minutes and explain exactly how I'm going to move this and that. I said, man, if I'm in that exam for more than 5 minutes, I have failed. I think that's one thing.
I'm just going to do a big amen for you because, yeah, the TCs is crucial, right? And I agree.
Yeah.
A lot of doctors think it becomes the doctor show, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, let me.
No, nobody wants to talk to me. The other thing that I see mistakes on is some orthodontists in bigger cities are not part of their communities. Okay, they practice in one area, but they live in La Jolla or to say San Diego.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you need to live where you practice. Those parents want to see you at the movie theater. They want to see your name on the back of the kids' jerseys, all that stuff. Now, most of them do a really good job, but every once in a while I sit there and go, why do you live in this and you practice here? I mean, at least live pretty close. You don't have to actually live in that city, but you could live within that that area.
Right. Yeah. No, and have a presence there. Absolutely.
Right.
So I'm a big book fan. I do audiobooks. I love audiobooks. Besides the Practice RX by Dino Watt, is there any other book? Plug.
You know what? I read Raving Fans when I was a young first-year orthodontist. And every single one of my employees, when they come in to work for me, they read Raving Fans. And that is my Bible. First thing I go, if you do this, you are following my philosophy. That is what it's all about.
All right. In my book, The Practice RX, I always focus on team culture and team performance as the foundation for business growth. Yep. What do you see as the biggest challenge private practice owners face when with their teams and their office culture?
So the biggest issue is small teams are easy to have a team, okay? Because everybody knows each other and you're all in it together. When you get a big team, that's when it's really the hardest. I always describe it like, if you know the baseball analogy of that fifth starting pitcher, like the first four are awesome, but how do you get that fifth one? It may not be quite as awesome to kind of be with everyone else. And so that's always the difficulty when you have bigger staffs. And you need to cultivate that. You need to have a core group of employees that know the philosophy up and down, and they set the tone.
So how can the listeners who are on this, listening to this right now, how can they reach out to you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you if they needed to?
Oh, they can just go to my private email, kurtstormberg@hotmail.com.
Well, as we wrap up here, I know this is a tough question because it's on the spot too, but when it comes to being a practice owner, well, actually, I'm going to spread this out to anything in life. What's the best advice you've ever been given in your life or for your business?
For my business, the best advice that I got as a young orthodontist was from a really well-known orthodontist who I was an associate for one day a week. And he sat me down one day. He said, Kurt, you have a really good personality. You're really good at what you do. And people are going to really want you in their community. And they're going to say, can you build a satellite here? Can you put an office here? And you can do this. He said, it's the biggest mistake orthodontists make is spreading themselves too thin. If you stay in one area and become the man, your practice will flourish. And I listened to that and followed that, and I still one location, and I am one of the largest practices in all of San Diego, even against guys who have 3 or 4 locations, because they spread themselves too thin. They think the grass is greener somewhere else, and really it's green where you're at, and you should really cultivate that. Yeah.
So in order to grow their practice, though, what do you think the one tool is or resources that every private practice owner should be using?
Delegation. You have got to.
Good answer.
If you want to grow your practice, you can't sit there and bend wires all day. That's wonderful. I feel like I failed if I have to bend a wire. Oh my gosh, I say that to some of my ortho friends and they look at me like, heresy, what's wrong with you? But it's delegation. It's learning to build systems in your practice that makes it efficient so you can place more patients per day, okay? Yeah. And to be more efficient with your treatment so that you're not running over a lot, with cases. It's all efficiencies.
It's interesting you mentioned the heresy, right? Because I think of so many doctors do think like that bend was my art, right? That was my piece of art. When you think of it on that context, you are creating art. Look, I'm the recipient of Dr. Farash's, my old orthodontist, talent in his art, and I'm so grateful to that. But I'm also the recipient of him being able to share that art, teach that skill set to other people that can replicate what he does. You live in San Diego, you know, I'm sure, of Wyland, right, and all his amazing portraits out there.
Of course.
And I actually just got to meet him a couple of months ago. We got a painting by him, and I'm on his mailing list, and I see his whole new production he's doing for Disney, and it's amazing. There's like 50 different pieces. It would take him the rest of his life to do that if he wasn't able to duplicate himself.
Correct.
Same thing with you. You as business owners, as practice owners, share that skill set of art, and you're enhancing the lives of those people you're doing it for as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So that's awesome. Well, you've been a pleasure to have on the show. Thank you so much for being a part and sharing that wisdom. If you're listening to this after the PCSO, then please make sure you check them out and sign up for the upcoming events and find out more how you can get involved. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and being here and all of your wisdom, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Dino. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur Podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for your support. We'll see you on the next episode.